Hi, my name is Elena and I'm 32 years old. Just a few months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. I lived in a beautiful house in New York with my husband, Mark, who is 34. I loved him with all my heart, and I believed he loved me too. But as they say, life can change in an instant. I still remember that evening clearly. It was our wedding anniversary, and I had prepared a special dinner at home. I had dressed up in my favorite blue dress and lit candles to make the evening perfect. I wanted this to be a night to remember, but little did I know, it would be the night my heart would shatter. Mark arrived home, but something felt different.
He didn't smile when he saw me.
His usual warm eyes were cold and distant. I thought maybe he was just tired from work, so I tried to lighten the mood. Surprise! Happy anniversary, Mark, I said, holding out a gift I had carefully picked for him, a new watch he had been eyeing for weeks. He didn't even look at it. Instead, he sat down at the table, took a deep breath, and looked me straight in the eye. My heart started to race, and I could feel something was wrong. Elena, we need to talk, he said, his voice serious. I sat down, trying to stay calm. What's wrong, Mark? I asked softly. He hesitated for a moment before dropping the bombshell. I want a divorce. For a second, I thought I had heard him wrong. My entire body froze, and my mind went blank. A divorce? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Yes, he replied coldly. I've found someone else. I'm in love with Jessica, and I'm leaving you. Tears welled up in my eyes as I tried to process his words. Jessica was the daughter of a powerful political family. I had seen her once at a charity event. She was beautiful, confident, and everything Mark admired. But I never thought he would leave me for her. But why, Mark? I managed to ask, choking back tears. I've given you everything. I've supported you through thick and thin. How could you do this to me? He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Elena, you're a good person, but you're not enough for me anymore. Jessica can give me the life I want, power, connections, and wealth. You can't. I felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. My heart broke into a million pieces, but I didn't want to beg. I still had my dignity. If that's what you want, I said quietly, wiping my tears, then I won't stop you. But you'll regret this one day, Mark.
He scoffed.
I doubt it. Jessica's family can open doors for me that you never could. Little did he know, I had a secret of my own, one that would soon turn his world upside down. But for now, I let him leave, knowing that karma always has a way of coming back. And that was the night my dream ended, but it was also the night a new chapter of my life began. After Mark packed his bags and walked out of the house, I sat on the couch, staring at the flickering candlelight. The food I had prepared sat untouched on the table, but I had lost my appetite. My mind replayed Mark's cold words over and over. But as the night dragged on, something inside me shifted. The pain was still there, but I wasn't going to let it destroy me. I wiped my tears and took a deep breath. I reminded myself of the one thing that Mark didn't know. My father, Thomas Parker, wasn't just an ordinary man. He was the CEO of Parker Tech Corp, a $5 billion company that was one of the largest in the country. My father had built the company from the ground up, creating innovative tech products that revolutionized the industry. Growing up, I had everything I could have ever wanted. But when I married Mark, I chose to keep my father's fortune a secret. I wanted a simple life, and I didn't want Mark to marry me for money. I guess that part of my plan worked too well. The next morning, I made a decision. I called my father. Hi, Dad, I said, my voice still shaky. Elena? What's wrong, sweetheart? He asked, immediately sensing something was off. I need to see you, I replied. Can I come to your office today?
Of course, he said.
Come by whenever you're ready. By noon, I was standing outside Parker Tech Corp, a massive glass building in the heart of New York City. I hadn't been here in years, but as I stepped inside, I felt a wave of familiarity. The receptionist smiled when she saw me and quickly led me to my father's office on the top floor. Dad, I said as soon as I entered, tears welling up again. Mark left me. My father stood from behind his desk, concern filling his eyes. He hugged me tightly, letting me cry on his shoulder. After a few minutes, I wiped my tears and told him everything: how Mark had left me for Jessica, how he had mocked me, and how he believed I was worthless without him. My father listened quietly, his face growing more serious by the minute. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and sighed. I never liked that man, but I trusted your judgment. Now, he's going to learn a lesson he'll never forget. What do you mean? I asked, curious. You're not going to sit at home and cry, he said firmly. You're going to work here with me. I'll make sure you rise to the top of this company. And when the time comes, Mark will see exactly what he gave up. A spark of hope ignited inside me. My father had always believed in me, even when I doubted myself. But Dad, I don't know if I'm ready for that, I admitted. You're stronger than you think, Elena, he said. And you have me. We'll do this together. I nodded, determined to prove not only to Mark but to myself that I was more than he had ever imagined. A few weeks later, I was officially working as a senior project manager at Parker Tech Corporation. My father made sure I had all the support I needed, but I worked hard to earn my place. I spent long nights in the office, learning everything I could about the company. Slowly, my confidence grew, and I began to feel like myself again. But then, fate decided to give me an unexpected gift. One afternoon, my assistant rushed into my office, looking panicked. "Miss Parker, you won't believe who's in the lobby," she said.
Who?
I asked, puzzled. "Mark and Jessica." My heart skipped a beat. What were they doing here? I quickly composed myself and walked to the lobby, where I saw them standing at the reception desk. Jessica had her usual smug smile, and Mark looked as arrogant as ever. "Elena," Mark said when he saw me. "Wow, didn't expect to see you here. Did you come to beg for a job?" He smirked, and Jessica giggled beside him. I felt a surge of anger, but kept my cool. "What do you want, Mark?" I asked, crossing my arms. "We're here to meet with the board," Jessica said confidently. "We're proposing a partnership to help my father's company. Poor girls like you don't belong here," she added with a fake laugh. Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the room. "Elena belongs here more than anyone," my father said as he walked in, his presence commanding the room. Mark and Jessica's smiles disappeared instantly. My father walked up to them, his expression hard as stone. "You're not getting a partnership," he said sharply. "In fact, we've already terminated all contracts with your father's company. Your little empire is finished." Jessica's face turned pale, and Mark stood frozen in place, as if he had seen a ghost. "You can't do this," Jessica protested. "I already did," my father replied coldly. "Now, both of you get out of my building." I watched as security escorted them out, my heart racing with a mix of relief and satisfaction. The man who had broken me was now experiencing his own downfall. But this was just the beginning of my journey. I had more to prove, and I wasn't stopping here. As the elevator doors closed, taking Mark and Jessica out of my sight, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. But this wasn't the end. It was the start of something bigger, a version of me they would have never expected. My father smiled proudly and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did well, Elena," he said. "But don't stop now. There's more ahead." I nodded, determined to stay focused. "I'm not done yet, Dad. I want to build something of my own within this company, something they'll remember me for." He chuckled and nodded. "Then let's make it happen." Over the next 6 months, my transformation was nothing short of extraordinary. I led major projects that brought Parker Tech Corp millions in revenue, launched a new product line, and gained the respect of my colleagues. Every step I took was a victory, a small reminder that I was no longer the same woman who had been abandoned by Mark. But life, as always, had its twists. One afternoon, I received an invitation to a high-profile business gala. My father encouraged me to go, saying it was time I made my public debut as the rising star of Parker Tech Corporation. I agreed, knowing this event could open new doors for me. The gala night. I arrived at the gala in a sleek black dress that hugged my figure perfectly. My makeup was flawless, and my hair fell in soft waves. For the first time in a long time, I felt powerful and beautiful. As I stepped onto the red carpet, cameras flashed and reporters whispered my name. Elena Parker, the rising businesswoman. The whispers made me smile. It felt good to be recognized for my hard work, not for being someone's ex-wife. I made my way inside, mingling with influential business leaders. That's when I saw him. Mark. He was standing near the bar, holding a glass of champagne, looking as if he didn't belong. His expensive suit didn't hide the stress in his eyes or the slump in his posture. And he wasn't alone. Jessica was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Mark stood with a man I recognized as a venture capitalist. From the look on Mark's face, things weren't going well. I decided to approach him. "Mark," I said, my voice calm and confident. He turned, and for a moment his eyes widened. He wasn't prepared for this version of me. Gone was the tearful woman he had left behind. I was a different person now, and he knew it. "Elena," he said, forcing a smile. "You look amazing." "I know," I replied, keeping my tone polite but distant. "How's life been treating you?" His smile faded. "It's been complicated. Jessica and I separated." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? What happened to your dream life with hers?" Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Her father's company went under, and things fell apart. She wasn't the person I thought she was." I almost laughed at the irony. He had left me for someone he thought could give him everything, only to end up with nothing. "Well," I said, "I'm sorry to hear that." My words were polite, but I didn't feel any sympathy. "Elena, I made a mistake," he said, stepping closer. "I was stupid, and I regret leaving you. We had something real, and I ruined it." I stared at him, thinking back to all the nights I cried over him. But those tears had dried long ago. "I appreciate the apology, Mark," I said, "but I'm not interested in going backward." "Please," he begged. "Give me another chance." I shook my head. "No, Mark. You didn't just break my heart. You destroyed my trust. And now that I've rebuilt my life, there's no room for you in it." Before he could say another word, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, lost and defeated. Later that night, as I returned to my seat, I felt a sense of closure. Mark's apology was the final piece I needed to fully let go of the past. I had built a new life, one that didn't revolve around him. Just as I was about to leave the event, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Elena, wait." I turned around to see David, an old college friend I hadn't seen in years. He had always been kind to me back then, but life had taken us in different directions. Now he was standing in front of me, looking more confident and successful than ever. "David," I exclaimed. "It's been so long." "It has," he said, smiling. "I saw you on the news recently." I couldn't believe the transformation. We spent the next hour catching up, reminiscing about old times and sharing stories about our careers. By the end of the night, he asked me out for coffee, and for the first time in a long while, I said yes. A week later, I received shocking news. Jessica had been arrested for her involvement in financial fraud within her father's company. The headlines were everywhere, and Mark's name was dragged into the scandal as well. Their fall from grace was complete, and the world watched as their once perfect lives crumbled. But I wasn't interested in their downfall anymore. I had moved on to bigger and better things. As I sat in my new office, overlooking the city skyline, I felt at peace. I had everything I needed: my father's support, a thriving career, and the beginnings of a new relationship with someone who truly valued me. This time, I wasn't just living life. I was owning it. And I knew that no matter what came next, I would never let anyone take my power away again. 3 months later, life had become a whirlwind of success, growth, and new opportunities. I had officially been promoted to Chief Operations Officer, COO, of Parker Tech Corp., overseeing some of the company's most significant expansions into global markets. My name was no longer just associated with my father, it was now recognized on its own. But as I sat in my sleek office overlooking New York City, sipping coffee, my assistant entered with a concerned expression. "Elena, you have a visitor," she said hesitantly. I raised an eyebrow. "Who is it?" "It's Mark." I sighed. I had hoped that after our last encounter, he would finally let go, but it seemed I wasn't that lucky.
Send him in, I said.
Mark entered, looking like a shadow of his former self. His expensive suits no longer masked the fact that he had lost everything: Jessica, money, status, and reputation. There were bags under his eyes, and his once confident posture was now slouched. "Elena," he began, but I stopped him with a raised hand. "Why are you here, Mark?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. He hesitated before replying. "I need your help. I've hit rock bottom. I lost my job, my investments, and my reputation. No one will work with me anymore, and I'm drowning in debt." I leaned back in my chair, studying him for a moment. The old me would have felt sorry for him, but not anymore. "What exactly do you want from me?" I asked. "I'm asking for a loan," he said. "Just enough to help me get back on my feet. I promise I'll pay you back." I almost laughed at the audacity. "Let me get this straight. You left me for someone else because you thought I was a poor girl, and now you're here asking me for money?" His face turned red with shame. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm desperate." I stood up, walking around my desk until I was standing directly in front of him. "Mark, I'm not the same woman you left behind. I worked hard to rebuild my life, and I'm not going to reward you for betraying me. You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it." He looked down, defeated. "Please, Elena. I have nowhere else to go." "I think you're forgetting something," I said, crossing my arms. "When you left, you told me I wasn't enough for you. But the truth is, you were never enough for me." With that, I called security. "Escort Mr. Collins out of the building," I said. "He's not welcome here anymore." As the guards led him away, I felt nothing but relief. This was the closure I didn't know I needed. With Mark officially out of my life for good, I turned my attention back to my work. Parker Tech Corp had just secured a major deal with an international firm, and I was at the forefront of the negotiations. My father was proud, and the board of directors was impressed with my leadership. But one of the best changes in my life wasn't just my career, it was David. We had gone from casual coffee dates to something much deeper. David was supportive, understanding, and everything Mark had never been. He encouraged my ambitions and celebrated my victories without jealousy or resentment. One evening, after a long day at work, David surprised me by cooking dinner at my apartment. As we sat on the balcony, overlooking the city lights, he held my hand and smiled. "You've come so far, Elena," he said. "I'm proud of you." I smiled back, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in years. "I'm proud of me too." He squeezed my hand. "So, what's next for you?" I thought about it for a moment. "I want to start my own division within Parker Tech, a women-led innovation team focusing on sustainability and future tech." David's eyes lit up. "That sounds amazing. And knowing you, you'll make it happen." Just as everything seemed perfect, an unexpected email landed in my inbox. It was from a law firm representing Jessica. She had filed a lawsuit against Parker Tech Corp, claiming that terminating her father's contract had been unlawful and financially damaging. The lawsuit demanded millions in compensation. I wasn't surprised by Jessica's desperation, but I wasn't going to let her win either. I gathered my legal team, led by one of the most respected lawyers in the country, and we prepared to fight back. The court battle was intense, with media outlets covering every detail. But in the end, we won. The court ruled in favor of Parker Tech, and Jessica's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, meaning she couldn't file it again. As an added bonus, she was fined for filing a frivolous lawsuit. When the verdict was announced, I felt an overwhelming sense of victory. Not just for the legal win, but for everything I had overcome. A year later, my women-led innovation team was thriving, and Parker Tech had launched several successful projects under my leadership. My name was frequently featured in business magazines, and people no longer saw me as Thomas Parker's daughter. I had built my own legacy. David and I had grown closer, and one evening, as we walked along the beach during a weekend getaway, he proposed. I said yes, knowing that this time, I was choosing someone who truly valued me. As I stood on the beach, looking out at the horizon, I realized that the version of me Mark had abandoned was gone forever. I had become someone stronger, wiser, and more confident. And as the waves crashed against the shore, I smiled, knowing that my best chapters were still ahead.